All right, we are right at 7 o'clock, so I will call tonight's city council meeting to order. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson, Councilmember Byström,
Here.
Councilmember Valento,
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here, I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of council, you have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Councilmember Byström and a second by Councilmember Husnick. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and our agenda is approved. Next up is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council. We do ask that you step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and if you could, for time purposes, keep your comments to 3 minutes. We look forward to your feedback. And first is Doug Ramseth.
Good evening. I'm Doug Ramseth. I live at 21220 Fondant Avenue North, and I'm here representing the Clear Lake Association and speaking on behalf of the proposal to close Eureka Avenue. On July 26th, the Clear Lake Association spoke before the City Council regarding the safety issues on Clear Lake, as well as the erosion problem caused by shore fishing and the deteriorating conditions on Eureka Avenue. We asked the city to repair the road and to eliminate the safety issues. City's response was a proposal to close the road without any data on traffic volume, without citizen input, and without thoughtful consideration of alternatives. Eureka Avenue is used by the residents of Clear Lake, Forest Lake, and by the citizens of Columbus, as well as the many boaters who use the public access on Clear Lake. The recent addition of traffic lights at the Hornsby Highway 97 intersection has made much safer to use Eureka Avenue, to turn onto Eureka Avenue, and that has increased the traffic, which, as we pointed out before, is a serious issue given the condition of the road. Closing Eureka Avenue is going to divert traffic to Forest Road. Forest Road is as in bad condition as Eureka Avenue, and there are no traffic lights at the intersection of Highway 97 and Forest Road. So it's a busy highway. Left turns are dangerous, and even if you're not towing a boat trailer behind you. We ask that the city not simply opt for the cheapest solution after decades of neglect of the road. We request that we'd like to see more traffic data, we'd like to have community input, and we'd like to have a discussion of alternatives before the city makes its decision its final decision to close or repair Eureka Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next in open forum this evening is John Waller.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm John Waller. I live at 14010 Homestead Avenue, Hugo, Minnesota. I'm the Washington County representative at the Rice Creek Watershed District, and I do not speak for the board tonight, only for myself and as a representative of the taxpayers of Washington County. So tonight, I haven't been up here to see you for a while. This COVID's been a difference, and this is only 2 members I remember when I was here last. And but I came here to talk to you about how much money you pay into Rice Creek. I handed out a sheet a little bit earlier. I hope that you'll find it, councilpersons, and you'll find that Forest Lake is listed there, and you can follow it across to the Rice Creek. And this year you paid over $175,000 into the district. That's not bad. Washington County pays about $1 million, so you can figure that you're paying a pretty fair share of it. Yeah, I think when I first started to come up here, which was probably 3 mayors ago, it was around $125,000. So you're growing. And there's a couple things I'd talk to you about tonight that I hope you remember. And one word is reciprocity. Be certain that we got the money comes back. Work on that. Don't take over any more drainage ditches like you did out at the airport, because the watershed district will tax those folks and then not use that tax money to repair those ditches. You'll have to have a stormwater tax yourselves because you're in charge of it. So if you're going to be involved in the drainage system, the district is looking for partners to provide maintenance in which they will pay, the district will pay. This is new this year from our city partner meetings. They would pay for the maintenance of it instead of the district having to either contract it out or such. The other thing I'd say is about unfunded mandates. The district is just infamous about unfunded mandates. We love them. Stormwater ponds are one of my favorite examples, but they're very important in order to have the drainage conveyance system, the ditches and the streams work. So we need to kind of work in the future as to how we can get some money to maintain those stormwater ponds, come back from the district and partnerships. And partnerships are another important area I'd like to emphasize tonight. It's important for you to realize that the Soil and Water Conservation District, the Watershed District, and the should all work together. Don't be afraid to talk to them. Don't be afraid to be aggressive in asking for services. Use your stormwater plan as a system to notify the district about what you want to do in the future, and work on these partnerships. And I'll give you an example of one that's currently going on. In fact, good evening, Doug. Doug is a member of the Rice Creek Watershed District Citizens Advisory Committee, and we have this year in the budget money budgeted to improve the water quality and the shoreline of the road that you're talking about possibly abandoning. As I understood, it was going to be repaired, and at the same time the district wanted to do a project alongside it in order to provide for its erosion control. And at this time, then that is in the budget, by the way, for the district, so you work on that. I'd also want to tell you that that when you work with these projects together with the district, the city, and the Soil and Water Conservation District, you can have some great success. This issue, it came out of a study that the Soil and Water Conservation District did probably 10, 12 years ago when I first came on the board. I've been there 15 now. And we did that study about how to improve water quality at Clear Lake. And these studies just don't get lost. They do come off the shelf over time and when money becomes available for them and that get implemented. And so, for example, Birchwood currently is a very small city in the southern part of the Watershed District in Washington County, southeast part of Bear Lake. They have about 200 acres for the whole city. They have no commercial property. But we're going to do a water quality program down there. We're going to build a underground cement pond to capture stormwater runoff to White Bear Lake. Ramsey County is going to build it in coordination with their redevelopment of the South Shore Drive along White Bear Lake. Washington County is going to maintain the facility once it's built out of their pocket. The city of Birchwood is going to contribute some land, and so that will be their contribution. And an individual landowner is also going to contribute some land use to it. So Birchwood will have no money into it, and if you can keep on working that way, I advise you to do that. So with that, Madam Mayor, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight and taking up your time. Good night.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Next for open forum this evening is Bill Plombo. Thank you.
Close enough. Bill Plombon, 21930 Finley Court. I'm here on the Eureka Avenue topic and shutting it down. I'm representing probably the high-end users of that road. I live on Clear Lake. I take a left-hand turn off Finley Court, go to 11th, and go onto that road, minimum of 2 times a day probably to work. So I've seen the road evolve from over 20 years from a dirt road on the Anoka County side and then tar on the Washington County side, thinking, boy, I wish Anoka County eventually get around the tar, and that'd sure be nice. To the Forest Lake side has turned into a road that's sinking into the lake pretty much, especially a couple corners. Actually had my daughter crash on that road last winter, coming around that bank turn, and fortunately there was a rock to keep her from going in the lake. Otherwise she would probably end up in the lake, heading south on that road. And I think it's time we stop and not just stop the road and take a look at what would be the right thing to do. Putting a dead end there isn't for free. The people who come down that road need the ability to turn around. Where are they, how are they going to figure out where they're at? So before we just decide to stop it, maybe it's the right move. The road is unsafe. It's clearly an unsafe road. I drive it every day. Many times there's people fishing, walking down the road. They're close to the road. Their car's parked close to the road. It's dangerous. Somebody's going to get killed on that road. There's no doubt about it. Something needs to be done. But to just say our solution is to dead end a road that's under misrepair after so many years, I think is a little abrupt. I think we need to pause, understand the options, understand investments that may be needed. What are the choices? In the end, maybe that's the answer, but there's still a lot of dollars that will have to go into actually making that a useful road. If you plan on cul-de-sacing it, putting parking in, that's not cheap. It's all wetland, it's all lowland. And my preference would be, since I'm a high-end user, is to leave it there. I think the alternatives, once we do a traffic study, you're going to find aren't very good. Forest Road is a bad road. Taking a left-hand turn on the Forest Road going east is a death wish. Somebody's going to get rear-ended there often. If you require that as the alternative, going around to 61, traffic will pick up on 11th, coming that way to that stop where you go to Walmart and that area. So I think we need to look at the whole picture, take a deep breath, and make the right choice here once we see all what the options are. I just can't imagine one day driving up and there's a dead end sign just past the boat launch. It just doesn't seem like that's really been thought out. I mean, it's a piecemeal road. You got Anoka County, you got Washington County. When they started working on it, the first section of tar was put on outside Washington County. For those who've been around a long time, was put out there because the dust was blowing out onto the interstate. It was considered a safety concern. So the state funded one little section of tar, maybe 200 yards of tar. Then the next section on the on the north side of the road became an off-ramp for a while. And so they tarred that really nicely. So that's a nice section of road. Then Columbus decided they wanted to develop it, probably our nicest section of road that's been built here with sidewalks, beautiful lighting. Now that's increased traffic. And so we got that section of road done. And now we got this quarter mile in the middle that's under need of repair, severe repair. So just wanted to support what Doug had to say, and he took a lot of what I wrote and said it, so I think he covered it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Next for open forum is Eugene Hurstel.
Excuse me. Eugene Hurstel, 10234, 204th Street North, Forest Lake. And happy Columbus Day. I'm glad the Earth was found round, so we were discovered. But was it Leif Erikson? I don't know. But anyway, what I want to speak to again, maybe from what I did the last meeting too, was that I know there's a discussion about the community economic person or position and that. And I'm trying to figure out, I think in the last few years, we've had different ways of doing this, whether it was the county or whether or not our Dan Undum, who I know is a very excellent and hard worker. And now all of a sudden we need this position is there something that it hasn't worked? Or why are we exactly putting somebody in a position where we're going to $100,000, I would think, with benefits and all. And next year, what happens is that person will need an assistant. So they'll come back again and say, well, we have to get somebody to help this person do this, this, and this. And that's kind of been the trend in the Forest Lake City. We've had a number of positions hired, and then a little later on, they do need, quote unquote, some help. But so I would wait on it. I maybe think about it. I know there's a discussion, not necessarily a vote, but I would wait on it and do some homework. our economy, the way it is, the inflation, the uncertainty, and of course, what is it, Friday is Happy Tax Day. And I know that I'm mailing mine in and I'm, wow, it's a big drop. I mean, that I have to put forward and so many other people. I do know that there's some people that can afford it, but there's many in Forest Lake that cannot. And I think that we should look at the budget. We don't need a 13 point or 12% or that high. I think that's getting to the point where, boy, it's gonna be tough on some people. And I appreciate you looking into it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that were signed up for open forum. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak in open forum this evening? Karen, do we have anybody online for open forum?
I do not.
With that, we will close open forum and bring meeting back to council. Council, before you this evening is the consent agenda, items 6A through 6H. I will entertain a motion or any changes.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve consent agenda considerations 6A through 6H.
I'll second.
There's a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Valento. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose, abstain, and the consent agenda is approved. We will move on to our regular agenda item 7A. First item is a resolution to accept a donation of $1,001 from FLA to the Forest Lake Fire Department for fire safety coloring books. Chief Newman is not able to be here tonight to present the donation, so I will move to accept with gratitude the very generous donation of $1,001 from FLA for the Forest Lake Fire Department. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, I just want to recognize FLA for their continued support of the community.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. With that, all those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next item this evening is item 7B, a Planning Commission appointment of Geneva Kubo for the Planning Commission. Council, before you, you have an application and also a cover memo from myself appointing Geneva to this position. Some of you will remember seeing Geneva when we were filling the open council, the council seat when I was elected to mayor. She was an applicant at that time, has applied for a number of commission positions within the city. She and I have had a recent conversation, and she continues to express interest in this position, and I think she'd be a great fit and a great addition to our planning commission. So with that, I would motion that council approves the appointment of Geneva. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No, just to thank you to Geneva for her willingness to serve.
Yeah, just thanks for stepping up to the plate, one more person, so
Not
that's
to
great.
scare you away, we say this is one of the toughest positions in the city, so we are very appreciative of your willingness to serve. With that, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Oppose, and motion is approved. Moving right along, we have Resolution 1011-2102, which is the approval of an application for a grant from the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority for 2022 lift stations and force main improvements. Ryan, is this you? Thank you.
Yep, Mayor City Council, in front of you is agenda item where the city has been identified to receive a grant for the project of the 2022 lift station enforcement improvements in the amount of $1.7 million from the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority through the appropriation from the Minnesota legislation. In order to receive the grant money from Minnesota Public Facilities Authority, the city must submit required information before entering into the grant agreements. The first step is this resolution, and then you'll see additional information at future council meetings. So it's our recommendation for the city council to approve this resolution so we can submit to the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority.
Thank you, Ryan. Council, any questions for Ryan or members of staff? Follow-up items for this resolution?
Sure sounds like a no-brainer to me for applying for a grant. So therefore, I'd make a motion that we approve the resolution 10-11-21-02 to approval for of an application for a grant from Minnesota Public Facilities Authority for the 2022 lift station and force main improvements.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just continued appreciation for finding grant funds, so thank you. And with that, all of those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. Next item this evening is 7D, we have a streetlight installation denial appeal. And Dave, do you want to start on this? And then I think we've got the appellant in council chambers. I'll give an opportunity for her to respond or address council if she would like.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Recently, I think it was the beginning of September, a streetlight request came in for Bay Drive Southeast. You can kind of see the map that I have on the memo. It's a small road that goes right off the bank of Bay Drive when it turns into 11th Street. And it's about a road that holds, I think it's about 15 houses on that road. The request came in requesting a streetlight be installed across the street from 1076 Bay Drive. This request was denied by myself, citing that and the criteria that our streetlight policy uses is it at an intersection, is it at mid-block, is it at a dead end, or is it a traffic hazard? In this case, Bay Drive already has one at the intersection, already has one at mid-block, and one at near the dead end of the street. Fourth criteria is traffic hazard, and it's a low volume traffic road with very little pedestrian traffic. So on that basis, it was denied. The applicant didn't agree, and I said she was more than willing to appeal, which she did at the last council meeting, appeal at open forum. So that's why we're here tonight, to get your decision, your thoughts, and where to go from here.
Thank you, Dave. Would the appellant like to address council at all? I know you did during open forum, but if you had some further comments, I wanted to give you an opportunity. Welcome. And if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Geneva Kubal, 1076 Bay Drive Southeast. As much as I understand that it is the there's a mid-block and the dead end, the street is still very narrow. The street is still very dark. And the light at one of the corners does not come back into the street at all where we are. When we talk about minimal pedestrian traffic, the reason it's minimal pedestrian traffic, and it's not as minimal as one might assume, is because it is a dead end. But all of the people that live in the dead end do a lot of walking in the neighborhood. And so percentage-wise, they're not going to have the general walking traffic that anybody else has, but their needs for safety are just as high. And it is a really dark street, and the light from the that's there, it does not integrate back into that area. And so for probably about 300 feet or more, it is very dark, even if you go with the mid-block. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring consideration back to council. Council opportunities for any questions you might have for Dave. Any thoughts?
I just want to say I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to drive over there and take a look for myself what I thought, but what would be the biggest issue as far as installing it there, Dave? Just for my, is it getting some power there, or what would be the issue?
There would probably be no issue of getting a light put there. The staff is just concerned that it's a precedent that you're setting, that we have next thing you know, the applicant just said that it's dark throughout the whole neighborhood. Well, next thing you know, every power pole is gonna have a street light, and that, you know, so that's, doesn't sound like a lot. It's $11, right now it's $11.82 a month to have a light bulb on there, times a 30-year agreement. So as soon as you put one up, you're locked in for 30 years on that light bulb, you know, and that's just, you know, Public Works, everybody is concerned about safety. It's just, you set a precedent where we're gonna allow them at every 100 feet, we're gonna get bombarded with streetlight requests, you know, so. And in typical developments, they set it about 300 feet. I mean, that's just where they're at. You get power there, I mean, it's a power pole, so there will be power available.
So these are about 300 feet apart right now? Is that the idea?
Yeah, the ones right now, I believe the first one's 308 feet and the next one's 397, so about 300 feet apart.
I was just trying to get a vision of what we're doing there, because like I said, I didn't get a chance to drive down there and look, so. But it sounds to me like we're already meeting the standard that we use throughout the city. Is that correct? I mean, is that a fair statement?
It's probably more lighting than a lot of that neighborhood is to begin with. There's some that don't have mid-block lighting. Every intersection in that neighborhood has one, and every cul-de-sac has one, but there's a lot of mid-blocks missing already. This one has all three of the criteria. So I mean, it's one of those, either staff is just following the policy of how it goes. So we either have to look at revamping a policy of looking at every request on a different level, or we just follow the policy and go that direction.
My concern on this one is the kind of the precedent that it sets and reasons for denial on future requests. You know, this is the dead end portion of that street, and there's houses on one side of the street. The houses on the other side of the street are actually on 15th. So it's one side. 100% I appreciate the applicants or the appellants' concerns around pedestrian safety. There are no sidewalks, and also the concerns around blockage of, you know, the lighting from other, you know, I think it's the tree canopy in this situation that's causing that concern. However, we have a lot of streets without sidewalks with blockage due to tree canopy, and so my concern is that, you know, this opens the floodgates for other requests, because there's a lot of situations that are as dark without, you know, sidewalks that have this situation. So I would encourage us to look at the policy if we were to make a change, rather than to grant an appeal would be just kind of where I'm at personally.
That's, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to reinforce your statement there, because the policy is really important part here. It's just like a sign ordinance.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing. And as long as we're meeting the standard that we've established for many years ago, you know, then I would be more leaning toward the upholding the denial. That's just one vote.
The other part, just to add on to that a little bit, back to the tree canopy, we have a lot of great neighborhoods with a lot of great tree canopy, which is a benefit, but the detriment is it does create challenges with street lighting. And so again, I just think we've got a lot of neighborhoods with this situation. So my personal concern is, if we want to consider this, let's consider a broader policy decision and costs associated with a broader policy decision rather than one denial appeal. Other comments?
You look like you're ready. No, yeah, I tend to agree here. Although I do think, you know, an opportunity to revisit the policy probably is in order as well. You know, are there certain circumstances under which, you know, we can make some concessions where the policy is concerned, given that we haven't really outlined those. You know, I'm just a little bit concerned, as you are, Mayor Bain and Councilmember Husnick, that we are again setting a precedence where our policy is concerned. I really would like us to take a look at this, though, because I'm equally concerned about Ms. Kubal's concerns about safety in that area and the ability to be able to get out and walk and be safe
And we do,
in that neighborhood.
and we do know walkability is important and
Yeah.
it's high on residents' list. And we make that worse by no sidewalks and then lack of lighting. And I guess I would like to, Dave, if we're gonna take a look at this, I'd like to just look at what is cost, if we were to shrink down some of these distances, what would be the cost impact if all of those turned into actual requests? And I would just like to have that number in mind before we start kind of allowing some exceptions. Oh, I will allow you in just a second. Anything else you want to add or?
Yeah, I just want to echo all of your concerns, that I agree that looking at the policy, I don't think there's, I just think that we need to follow the policy and I don't want to set that precedent. And like you have all said, I think it'd be very interesting to look at the policy. Is looking at it on here, I don't see a date of when it was adopted. I mean, I guess maybe other people might know that, but it'd be interesting to see how old it is and then to compare it to maybe other cities as well.
Would the applicant like to come back?
I think it does have an adoption date of 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yep. But I would also, Dave, like to maybe see how we compare to other cities policy-wise, kind of comparable. How do they handle neighborhoods of this? And maybe that's been done. I don't know.
Yeah, so when this came up, I actually talked to our engineering tech with Bolton and Mink, and we don't have a detail plate in our engineering standards for lighting, for development. So he was gonna do some checking around to other cities. Probably be helpful in future developments too. A lot of times they get dropped in, but it'd be nice to have a X amount of footage or less, depending on curves and all that stuff. So depending on what he finds, that may fix the policy for us or explain some of that stuff out better. Because right now we have a policy, but no detail plate for engineering standards. So, which is fine, but if another city has a detail plate for street lighting, that might answer some of our questions automatically. So he tends to update these throughout the winter. So, by next spring, by the time construction season starts, we have the updated detail plates. So maybe plan on sometime between now and springtime, bring back the policy on what we find with detail plates. That would probably be the best step. And then also a cost. I can bring up some costs, what that looks like per light, per footage, and all that kind of stuff. So
Thank you. And if you wanted to come back to podium just so those who are online can hear.
I just want to address a couple of the things that were brought up. You guys talk about precedent setting, and you guys also talk about you're worried about future requests. I'm kind of interested in how many requests have even come in the last 5 years for a street light.
Dave, do you have that on the back?
there's 4 of them that came in so far this year. One's in review and 2 were granted.
Okay.
One at the intersection of Healy and Highway 97 that was missing on that hill. They got a light added there. And for some reason, there was a street light missing along Goodview Avenue at Georgia. Every other intersection had a light along that path. So those 2 were granted. This one on Bay Drive was denied, and the 4th one is in review. That's on the corner of Healy and 217th up by Castle Golf Course up there.
Would the city entertain the idea to move one of the existing lights more over to this area that is really dark? Instead of getting another light, moving one that's already there to better serve that street.
So thank you for that. I'll have you sit and, so interesting concept. If we were to consider that, I would encourage just some level of neighborhood notification. Just, I don't want to move one and fix one problem and create a broader neighborhood problem. So Dave, we'll just kind of leave that in your court if that's for consideration.
I can check, but I'm pretty sure you're signing your contract for that light at that location, for that power
That's
source.
that's with the energy company.
Yep.
Okay.
So just a background, if everybody doesn't know, we don't own any of the streetlights in town except for the ones along, all the blue painted pole ones are the ones that we own, operate and maintain. Otherwise, either Connexus or Excel owns the pole, the light, everything. So if a light goes out and a resident calls Public Works to fix the streetlight, we don't fix the streetlight. We call Excel and put in a request online, and they come and fix it. So that's a kind of a misnomer that they're city lights, but they're not maintained by the city. They're maintained by the power company, except for the ones on Broadway and Lake Street, the blue painted ones.
So would a solution for Ms. Kubel be to reach out to Excel and have a conversation with them about moving the light?
It would depend where you, I mean, if you're moving the light that's existing, then you're just moving one farther away than the other. You're moving one close to the other, but then there's a 500-foot gap in between the next two.
And we are
Right.
outside of even current policy.
Okay.
So, and I can ask Excel, but I'm almost 100% positive when you sign the contract of the 30-year deal, it's for that light at that address for that maintenance agreement.
I think we need to, personally, I think we need to address the policy.
Policy question.
And I think maybe that can be fixed. I really do. I think that can happen by looking at other cities' policies and that kind of thing, give us an idea of some kind of a benchmark here. But right, based on what I'm hearing, we really don't have a choice except to uphold the denial. And I'd make a motion that we uphold the denial as according to Dave Adams.
The motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this one? Just part of that motion to deny, I think is also just, council's interest to staff on hearing back sometime first quarter of 2022, just to hear a policy review. With that, all those in favor of the denial, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose, and motion is approved. One remaining item on our action agenda this evening is the downtown vision statement. And Dan, I believe you're going to walk us through this.
Mayor, members of council, we actually have Bruce from HKGI present tonight, who will actually go through the overview of the downtown vision statement. I will provide some context that the EDA did review this during their meeting earlier today and did pass the resolution in support of the proposed vision statement with a slight ordering change, which Bruce has incorporated into his presentation for tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Thank you, Dan. I'm not sure how to turn on the video, though.
I got you.
Gotcha.
All right.
Magic.
So you must see it. I don't see it on this
Yep,
television.
it'll come.
It's
Give it a
delayed
second.
magic.
Delayed magic. Well, I will begin. Mayor and council members, thank you for considering this action tonight. I'm Bruce Chamberlain, as Dan mentioned, with HKGI, working on the downtown plan. I wanted to give you just a brief overview of some of the engagement that we've done to date, and just mention that the consideration of this action really is the culmination of the first half or so of time of the downtown plan. We've been spending a lot of time gaining community feedback, understanding the values of the community, talking to lots of different folks, and using that as a basis for some of the foundational directions and approaches that we're suggesting and recommending. So a little bit about the community engagement summary. We've essentially had online engagement going on since we began the process and gotten some really great feedback. This slide that you see before you identifies the number of visits to the website and the number of folks who actually commented on the questions that were up on that site as well. And it provides for us some really good understanding of where people are in their relation to the downtown. We also had a vision workshop a few weeks ago. We had 36 people attend upstairs, and we had 6 people attend online. It was a great discussion, some really robust conversation. And this slide identifies some of the feedback around what we call motivations, but essentially the reasons that people want to be in downtown, whether they live there and stay there or whether they're visiting. You can see that to recreate, to socialize, to shop, to dine, and to experience really rose to the top on some of the feedback that we gained at that workshop. The next exercise that we had was around audience. And the notion of audience is that there are categories of folks, or certain folks who are drawn to different places, and we wanted to understand who is currently and who is hoped to be drawn to downtown Forest Lake. So some really great feedback around the importance of retailers, the importance of hospitality business, residents and customers, along with recreational users downtown. So all of this culminated that evening with just some assessment that we wanted people to give us around the wording they wanted to see within a vision statement. So you can see some of the responses to words with mock questions that we gave around vision statements that rose to the top. So with that, the vision statement we took to the downtown committee in late September and took a draft vision statement to them. They had some really great conversation and continued to have that conversation after the meeting ended. We revised the vision statement, and the vision statement is really intended to be a reflection of community values. It's the basis for the directives that we roll into the plan, so it's really important from an investment standpoint there. It's also a touch point for evaluating alternatives, both for us to evaluate alternatives and provide good pros and cons, but also for the community, for all of you to evaluate alternatives too. It should be simple, it should be memorable, and it should be aspirational yet achievable. So with that, the vision statement that we reviewed and then revised based on input from the downtown committee and with the recent input from this evening's EDA committee also, is for Forest Lake's vision of downtown is to create a district welcoming to a broad audience of businesses, visitors, and neighbors, and a vibrant place with distinctive and memorable ways to experience it, especially around dining, recreating, socializing, shopping, and living life. Now, I think there are a number of things that are really important to this, but some key things are that this vision statement identifies audience. And just the fact that within this vision statement, we're asking you to be conscious of who is drawn or who you want to be drawn to downtown is really a unique as well as an important aspect of having a vision statement. So I encourage you to really recognize the importance of that as a basis for the vision statement. And also recognize that, especially with that second statement of the vision statement, it gives the downtown plan some baseline foundation upon which to explore and ultimately recommend targeted strategies to achieve those interests of audience members that are listed above. So it provides, even though it is broad, this is a broad statement, but it also provides some really critical aspects that I think are important to have in a vision statement. I am happy to answer any questions you've got as you discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Dan. This was as Bruce and Dan both mentioned, this was a discussion at tonight's EDA meeting, and the EDA did vote to affirm for recommendation to council the vision statement that's before us. The one minor change that is reflected on screen is just the reordering of businesses, visitors, and neighbors. Felt that was important, recognizing that downtown is going to be successful when there are vibrant businesses, and wanted to just make sure that was highlighted as first. With that, open it up for any questions. And Dan, you are looking for council approval this evening, correct?
Correct, yes.
Comments, questions, thoughts on where we are? so far?
I think just one comment, well, maybe a couple. I just have really valued this process, as a whole, and the opportunity, especially under the circumstances, for robust input online. And I'm not sure that that's the norm, but I did just want to kind of call that out. I think one of the things that kind of surprised me is that we want a district welcoming to a broad audience, and businesses is listed there, but not to work. So it kind of confused me a little bit, but maybe we're not thinking in terms of, offices and those sorts of things, maybe more of that retail side. So it just kind of struck me a little bit. It felt, there was a little conflict there, a little dissonance there, so.
Just to, yes, and your comment, that did come up a little bit tonight at the EDA, and there was some discussion around, part of that is living life, and part of that, so it's, while it's not directly called out, that there was some thought that two things in particular could be picked up in that living life section. One is around the shopping for services or experiencing services, but then also work could kind of be picked up in that category. Just trying to kind of draw a connection, because that was a topic that came up tonight at EDA as well.
That makes sense.
Other thoughts, comments?
No, because we went through it twice. so.
We did. I think just broadly, like to thank all of the residents and business owners and members of the EDA and this council that have kind of participated in the process and gotten us to this point. I'm excited we're at this spot, and I think we've hit on a vision statement that is broad, appropriately broad for what's important to Forest Lake. I like that we are in this version a little bit broader than the level of specificity that was in our first version, in particular around recreating. I know what came out of our visioning workshop, the trail was highlighted specifically, but we didn't specifically mention the lake, and I think a broader perspective around recreation more properly reflects what we want downtown to be, and that it's multimodal recreation, and that's what we want to support. So I think that is a great change. And then also being specific on dining. The first version specifically called out hospitality, which by definition includes dining. But I think, just as I am trying to summarize consensus of groups that we've had discussions, I think there's a strong consensus that dining is important. The broader aspect of hospitality, I think we're open to, but perhaps not so much, we're not so attached to a broader definition that wouldn't be picked up also by just saying we want to be a welcoming home to businesses of all types, and having dining as being that specifically called out activity, I think is kind of best reflects the conversations I've been a part of so far as part of this process. So I think we're landing close. I'm also really, with this broad statement, my comment to Bruce right before the meeting is we're going to have to be very specific in our next steps, because at some point we do need to focus down. And so if we're going to be broad in vision, our tactics, I think, will have to be pretty specific, would be what I would encourage. So
I guess that begs the question, what are the next steps?
that is a great question. Dan or Bruce, do either of you? Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, great question. So the next steps for us are to begin drafting design alternatives for downtown. So we will base our directives that we begin to explore in design on this vision statement. We've already started to draft a series of directives that we want to explore in design concepts. We're having a downtown committee meeting the end of November, and we're going to see if we can get a community workshop in before Thanksgiving to look at those alternatives and critique them. So those are next steps for us.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion this evening? Seeing any, I would move that we adopt the updated vision statement for our downtown plan.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Aye. Oppose? And motion carried. That ends tonight's action agenda. We are going to move into a workshop topic. Specifically, we have a single workshop topic this evening, and that is the Community Development Director position. Just a note for those that are watching in the room, much like our last meeting where we were considering the closure of Eureka Avenue, this is only a workshop discussion. Any action that council would take would take place at a future meeting. And so know that this is simply a workshop discussion of council consideration. With that, turn it over to Patrick.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, before you is a memo outlining what staff believes is the need to hire a community development director. I'm sure there are many questions, why now, what we need to do. Without going back to the last presentation we had before the council where we showed when we had a reorganization back in 2013 and 2014, and you took, the city reduced its community development function from 3 people to 1 people and combined a whole bunch of jobs into one. What they did there was burden the individual who was in that position with a scope of work that was way too large for that person to be successful. We limped by, the city limped by, but I would argue and be pretty strong about that, that when they did that, we reduced not our costs, but we reduced our service levels, we reduced our ability to respond to developers. It slowed our development time, and really it probably put more frustration and had more complaints from the development community because we couldn't react as fast as we could, and we had no real vision or no structure in place to help development happen. The EDA at an earlier meeting this year also expressed their concern regarding economic development. They believe that while Dan, as the earlier speaker said, does a great job, he has other duties as well. So it's only a part-time attention to EDA. The city administrator has other duties and other responsibilities that can only look at development on an ad hoc basis, basically. So with the resignation of the zoning administrator who was handling all the zoning issues, the property maintenance complaints, the zoning complaints, and any development submissions, we now have an opportunity to change course a bit. We have an opportunity to do a better job with development. But last time I spoke, I mentioned how large the community is getting, how fast it's growing. We are now at 20,000 plus population. We have 1,000 more housing units. I was going to save this for my announcements tonight, but we have 5 development proposals on the table right now. We have a 71 unit housing subdivision. We have a 125 unit subdivision. We have a 58 unit subdivision. We also have a 1 mixed use proposal, and we have a senior living proposal. Just those 3 subdivisions total up to 254 housing units that are possibly going to be built in the very near future. They're in the pipeline. They go to the Plan Commission when for plan review or concept review. They go through staff, and we try to make sure that everything's right, do the tweaks that needs to be happened, and go forward. So we are just seeing the beginning, in my belief, of increased development in the city. We also recently, with the downtown plan and that goal, we will see more development, hopefully there for the downtown. Last week, we've had 2 meetings on the redevelopment of the Vanelli's block already. We don't have a solid proposal, but we've been sitting down with the developer to talk about that and what may or may not can or cannot happen. That all takes a lot of time. That all takes a lot of planning. And then once those plans come or once those submission comes, it takes a lot of staff time Dan, myself, Ryan, Dave, even Jamie has to go through all those plans to make sure that we are getting the right mix of houses, sidewalks, parks, and downtown setbacks, and all of those things. So development, and that's the housing development. That's not the business development that we pay. We don't have enough people to look after business development. So the goal here is to hire an experienced community development director that can lead both the EDA side of the equation, which is focused on business attraction and business development and business retention, while at the same time looking at the residential developments and making sure that that process works as well as it possibly can. The city can do a better job. We haven't done a great job. We've gotten through. We've had a lot of bumps and bruises, but I believe that with a good, experienced community development director and some re-engineering of our processes, we can make it an more attractive community for development, and we can have a clear vision that any developer can come in and know what he or she has to present and what we expect out of a development. So I don't think that we can do that with our current staffing level or model. Again, we kind of do everything on an ad hoc basis when it comes to that. We have a bunch of smart people here that get us through, and you should be proud of those people and the amount of effort they have to take to do this. But I think now's the time, with the city growing, with these new developments and possibly other new developments, whether they are commercial, industrial, or residential, it's time to hire a community development director to guide us into the next few years and all the development. I mean, we're the next one in the line, Lino Lakes, Hugo, and all that. So we will see that development come. The other thing that we haven't addressed yet, the community development director would have to, is we passed our 2040 comprehensive plan. When we pass that plan, we have to change our zoning regulations to match what that plan says. I believe you're supposed to do that within 9 months to 12 months. Well, with the vacancy, we're not going to be able to meet that, but that will be one of the goals, to begin to change those zoning regulations to match the comprehensive plan, and hopefully look at the zoning as a whole to see if there's any other things that we may have to do or should be doing. And then finally, at the 17th, I believe it was, when you had your joint workshop with the EDA and the Plan Commission, we had developers in the room that spoke about the MXR1 district, which is the multifamily single-family district, and expressed the desire for changes in some of those regulations, some of those densities and things like that. We don't right now have anybody on staff to do that. Thankfully, the chairman of the Plan Commission has volunteered the Plan Commission to take that duty on and to begin to do that research and discussion regarding, should we change zoning regulations in that particular district? Are our current regulations too big, call for too big of lots? Should we go to smaller lots? Should we go to different setbacks? That's a long process to go through that and to figure out what's right for the community. And I think it's a real good idea for the Plan Commission to take that on, but they're going to need technical guidance. And if we should hire a community development director that can give them that technical guidance. The community development director would also be, in addition, we would rehire the planning position that Mr. Hart used to have, but concentrate him or her more on planning and those type of things, more the day-to-day things, and the community development director more on the development and meeting with developers, and also being out there in the community, hitting the streets and do some recruiting. Or when you hire somebody like this, and by the way, we are one of the very few communities that do not have a community development director. If you call up Hugo or Lino Lakes or White Bear Lake or any of our cities along the line, they all have community development directors. And what do? They not only administer their staff and the function of the city, but they're also out there at the real estate meetings, at the developer meetings, and getting their cities known, and hopefully selling the city and recruiting future development. So with all of that, I'll stop, but it's my recommendation that the city hire a community development director. It's also my recommendation that you allow the city to begin recruitment immediately. I think it's important to get this person on as soon as possible so that when he or she is on, they can hire a new planner, because I think if it's a department head, it should have at least some say in hiring the staff that they will work with. Not that we couldn't do it, but I always think it's a better idea for an incumbent to do that. So my recommendation and request is to hire a community development director and us to begin recruitment immediately. And if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Patrick. Patrick, tonight's a workshop topic. Timing, your timing is your thought that like proposal for next steps for tonight, and obviously we'll take council's thoughts into consideration. Would it be your plan to bring that back at our next meeting to actually approve the position? Is that how you're? Okay.
It would. My recommendation would be to come back to the next meeting. We approve the position and we approve the ability to go start the hiring process, being that it's now mid-October. I don't anticipate that process being done and complete and filled, if we're lucky, by the 1st of December if we can. And if the holidays, depending on if they get in the way, it could last until January. But I think we have the budgetary savings with 2 vacant positions to hire as soon as we possibly can. So I don't think it's a budgetary impact. But I think this is probably one of the most important positions and decisions we need to make for the future of the Forest Lake.
Council, open it up for questions, comments.
Madam Mayor, but just to clarify things for the public, Patrick, we're actually looking where this person would be actually helping the EDA, and part of their pay would come from that budget.
Right.
About half and half, I believe.
Yeah, the
it was.
proposal would be that the position would be funded half out of the general fund and half out of the EDA budget. So again, that person would be responsible for the work of the EDA, the structure of the EDA, and also the work and structure of the community development, planning department, and development review.
Councilmember Brystrom?
Yeah. You know, we've done well, let me start with saying, you know, I really do support this position, and I support it particularly because the EDA supports it, and they are committed to, you know, business development within the community, and I think that's been a gap for us. You know, we're seeing housing pop up all over, but we're really having a tough time attracting business to the community. But I do have a little bit of a concern and a couple of questions. We've been doing an awful lot of hiring, and I know that we have, in many cases, kind of shifted some of the ways that we're doing things to bring, you know, things in-house, you know, and I think about contracting out finance and then bringing in a finance director. And it, you know, it was, you know, really basically a wash for the most part. And we've done that in a few cases over the last couple of years. But I'm not sure the perception of the community is that. I think they just see us hiring. They do not understand how we're really trying to be, we're trying to look at what we're doing structurally and fill those positions well more broadly. So bringing some of those core functions back in-house and hiring people to be on site to be able to meet the needs of the city. So I would really like to take a little bit of a step back, and I don't mean necessarily a step back from hiring this position, but just to be able to kind of revisit some of that work that we've done over the course of the last couple of years. And maybe that would be of value in sharing out to the community as well, so that they understand what it is we're trying to do, right? What we're trying to do organizationally. I think the next question for me is, what are we not doing currently? Where are the gaps that this role would fill? And you've touched on some of that a little bit, but, I know we've shifted some of Dan's responsibilities to communication. We've talked a little bit about hiring a parks person, so we've got a lot of moving parts right now, and I'd really like to kind of better understand where we're going with all of this. I'd also like to understand the role of the planner. Will that role change? Will that be a different role than Donovan's role was? So those are just really the pieces for me. I just want to be sure I have all the information that I need to make the right decision. And I think these things will help me to make that right decision.
Yeah, just a few comments. What we're missing, biggest one I can tell you is outreach. We're not out there talking to developers, basically recruiting developers if we can, informing them about what the downtown, we have a great downtown plan process going on. But who knows about that? Who understands that? What are we going to do when it's done? And I would argue that the current structure won't allow us to be as aggressive or having the outreach that we need to make that downtown vision a reality. I think that's the largest one. I think the second one is we need to better coordinate the development process, not only for commercial, industrial, but housing. It's scattered a little bit. The prior position, Donovan's position, had to look at development, housing development, had to try to do zoning enforcement, had to try to do property maintenance enforcement, had to do had to do agenda items for the Plan Commission. The job was just too much for one position. Again, a new position like this would do the outreach, but then it also would coordinate better the development process that we need to coordinate internally as well. We just don't do a very good job with it. We get developers get frustrated when we can't clearly tell them what we need to be doing, what they need to be doing, or what our guidelines are. Sometimes in the past we have told them one thing at the beginning of a process, but somewhere in the middle of the process that changes. We need more consistency. We need to, not that it was broken, but we need to fix it and do a better job. We just haven't done the best job that we should. And my demand to a community development director would be not only outreach, but to fix our process, meet with all of us and put those structures in place so that everybody, staff, developers, the community have a clear understanding of what the steps are and what they have to do so that there's no mistakes. And developers complain because we hear a lot more complaints about developers. And I believe that comes from that the position, while in 2013, everybody thought it was a good idea to eliminate 3 positions and put them into one and it could be handled. It wasn't. It just didn't work. It's a place where we know it didn't work. It's not been working for a while. Again, you've had a lot of smart people, Donovan, Ryan, Dan, Dave, anybody that have made this go through, but it's difficult. It's time consuming. It's inefficient. So that's where we'd be going. And then the planner position would go back to do more of the zoning and the planning and things that I mentioned, particularly what I just mentioned. We have a comprehensive plan that we have to change our zoning ordinances to meet. We have zoning complaints, not property maintenance, put those to the side for a minute, that only a zoning planning person should understand and go after. Property maintenance, we're working on another system to address that with the building department, that since they're out in the field, they're probably better off actually looking at that. So the planner would be back to more day-to-day tasks and not so, still included in development, but really focusing on those nuts and bolts things that a planner, community planner needs to focus on. So.
If you don't mind, I want to reinforce what Patrick's been saying because I personally know that this effect has actually trickled down to building permits. We had a case where 5 weeks, not acceptable situation. And when you have somebody that is piled on with all this work and it's not getting done, And I heard this complaint from several different contractors. I'm out of that business, okay? But the point is, we need to do better. And so we could increase that by having better communication,
Mhm.
you know, what's going on, and then keeping that process moving. So I can see and we're a growing community. Come on, we're a growing community. We have some growing pains. And I think that there's some things that we need to get fixed, and that's one of them.
Yeah, and just to use one of the examples that we have run into recently, a single-family home being built, the planner should be able to tell them setbacks and coverage and impervious surfaces and drainage and all of that. That's what the planner, that's what I mean about the nuts and bolts, that person comes in and knows that thing backwards and forwards and upside down. I mean, after some, you know, everybody's a little different in every community, but there should be no real misunderstanding about what the requirements are to build a single-family home on a lot. And that hasn't been the case all the time.
And we had some of those. We did, so.
I called today.
Yeah, and I don't deny that, Councilmember Hosnick. It was probably one of the biggest complaints most frequent complaints I received. You know, so, you know, I just, you know, I like transparency, and I want our community to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish. And I think it's very important for us to be forthcoming with, you know,
I think
information.
when we were going through the budget process, I think a lot of that was explained in my mind.
Yeah, and
Clarified some, but.
And to your point, regarding past hirings in the last few years here, they really haven't been hirings to pad staff. They've been hirings to improve processes. And I would say honestly, background's more in finance, that why we ever outsourced our financial structure, I don't understand. That's one of the most important things that we have to track on a daily basis. And that didn't work either. It was just for cutting bodies, and it really didn't save us any money because consultants.
We were paying the same amount for a person that was here one day a week.
So we had to restructure that. And the second is we knew fairly early in I coming here that our utility billing system was a disaster. Basically, it was in a lot of complaints, a lot of mistakes, a lot of needless work that had to be done to bill out the utility bills on a regular basis. And we internally can do a better job at doing that. We purchased the software to do it. We hired an accounting manager to oversee that and to the utility billing, and to the discussion we had actually last week, and you better say yes. No, the discussion we had last week was to begin to look at our processes and try to make them streamlined and make them effective, so we don't have to hire more people. You know, I don't want to hire more people than we have to, but we have to do things correctly, and we have to do things efficiently. And we are still, as the last time we talked about this, we are still below the FTE count that we were in 2013. So we've been doing more stuff with less in a growing community. We have less police officers, we had less administrative staff, and we've grown to 20,000+, and we put on at least 1,000 housing units. So, and we have all these goals about downtown planning and everything else that are good things and future things, but we just need to make them work right. And to do that, we need certain targeted positions, and that's what this is. This is a targeted position. I'm not asking to, you know, hire 3 more administrative assistants or, you know, things like that. But we have to respond to those needs as a growing community. So.
For asking that question though, because I'm hearing similar questions, and I think it's important that we just need to keep reiterating why the addition to headcount, because I appreciate that it's not cheap, and we've been through this progression of staffing that we need to continue to answer those questions and need to continue to tell the story, because I think to your point, Councilmember Bystrom, it's important. One thing that just is mentioned in the memo is the hiring of an assistant. So Memo talks about hiring the community development director. Memo refers to hiring the planner, which is the replacement to Donovan's position, but it also mentions an assistant. And I'm not fully,
Yeah, let me-
comfortable that that's
No, and I agree.
fully baked and needed, and just give us perspective on that.
I think it's in there for discussion purposes. I think in the long run, that may be necessary because of the paperwork burden on doing minutes. We pay overtime, extreme overtime for Karen to do this meeting, the planning meeting. And so that's one way to address that. Spends a lot of time on preparing the planner. I mean, Donovan, he did the ads for the newspaper. He was a professional at doing ads for a newspaper. He did agenda. So I think we need to look at that. I'm not sure, right now, we're not ready to look at that. It's mentioned because if and when the community development director gets here, he or she will be consulted on, do we have enough staff? Is that needed? If it's not necessary, or is it necessary? We are also looking at efficiencies in our finance staff. We have 3 basically finance administrative assistants, that if we can streamline some of those processes, accounts payable, utility billing, some of the payroll, some of the other finance things, we may be able to free up some time that can be shifted to a different place. However, also, we know that we get a lot of calls on property maintenance, and they're kind of hit or miss. We need somebody to kind of take those complaints and schedule inspections on those, and that's kind of what we were looking at. But it's there because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. I think that's a position we can wait on and probably will, but I want to make sure it's in your mind that that's a possibility. So I don't think we'll be recommending that. If we do recommend it, it won't be until, it'll be a half-year recommendation, or it will wait until 2023. Again, I think that's up to a community development director, if we hire one, to say, okay, I have enough people, or I don't have enough people. And it's up to us to, again, try to make other parts of the organization more efficient, so that maybe we can retask some of those positions, or at least a part or some of the time of those positions.
My thoughts in hearing that is just to make sure, if we are going to hire this community development director position yet this year and get that moving sooner rather than later, it'd be my recommendation that we just make it clear to that individual that administrative support does not exist today, and part of just being part of a small organization today is, it means you wear lots of hats, and today you are.
Absolutely.
If that means you are putting the notice in the newspaper and going to pound the sign for a public hearing that needs to be held, it means that's just what we're doing, because we're a
And
small
I
shop.
think that's not so much community development, but the planner will be pounding those signs or doing, or
Right.
we can train, again, if we have some extra time, somebody knows how to do a notice for the newspaper is pretty standard, and you just have to change the names and the addresses and PIN numbers and things like that. So that's not a far-reaching thing. But again, it's in there because I think that we have to be sure that that may or may not happen. Again, only because of not the difficulty, but the increased workload and the history of, it used to be there. I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but we had 3 people doing it. Doesn't mean we need 3 people now, but I just needed to mention that to be sure you're aware that we're in our heads a little bit.
I do want to make another point about this position. Does somebody have the ability to pull up the 2040 comp plan zoning map? Because I just think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So the question keeps coming up again. Seems like we're a little top heavy. Do we need this extra position? And what always rattles in my mind whenever we're asking that question is, if we believe that a low tax, that we need a healthy commercial industrial district to maintain, kind of offset the costs of residential. We all, we had the slide last meeting that kind of talked about how residential services are expensive. And if we want to maintain that healthy tax base, we need to have the mix. And I would continue to put focus on our 2040 comp plan has that entire southwest corner in pink. And if it's from 180th, the Hugo border, from Elmcrest over to beyond Fenway, and you'll see it on the picture here as soon as we're able to get it up.
Yeah.
If we're not able to get it
I have
up,
not been over.
it's the pink little section here that's pretty substantial that I feel like natural market tendencies for that is to develop in residential. And so if we're going to indeed put it as industrial or commercial, that is going to take a shift in what is, I think, a trajectory to naturally develop today. And that's got to be somebody's full-time job. Because if we don't do anything, the pressure is going to be, I think, for that to continue to be a residential build out, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but it does mean it's a different tax shift. And I think it needs to be a conscientious decision and something that we have managed rather than something that just naturally happens because we aren't actively addressing it. So that pocket needs some attention, as well as just, I think, commercial, industrial, recruitment in general. We end up being behind if we're not out actively marketing. And I think that is just a full-time role that needs full-time attention. So I'd continue to put focus on that, and continues to be a reason why I support this position sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I can't get the comp plan up. I don't get here. I have the zoning map, but that doesn't show the same.
We could include that maybe in next
Yeah,
meeting's
sure.
packet when that comes forward again, because I think it's a visual. Look at how it's developing today. It's leaning towards residential, and if it's going to go a different route, which is what our 2040 comp plan says, we need some active recruitment to make that happen. Or alternatively, what's the plan if it's not that, and that in and of itself is another zoning challenge, because as Patrick mentioned, the goal is that we start changing zoning to be what is part of the comp plan. So, any other thoughts, comments, considerations you want Patrick to hear as he's preparing to bring this back for a future council meeting? All right, I'm hearing general support. Obviously not a slam dunk until we have seen all information, and
Right.
look forward to a future packet item.
And hopefully at the next meeting, which is the budget workshop, we will show you a budget that has those figures included in those and how that looks to, we've done some other adjustments, so we'll have that for you at the next meeting.
All right, we will move into, I'm sorry, we do not have a public comment period anymore.
Found it. Found it.
Oh, we found it. So here is the zoning map, the items in pink. So the item in pink, just to give some context, is our highway business district. And it is the bottom far southwest quadrant
Come on.
of the city. We just lost it. We had it for a second.
I felt.
Are you on the full comp plan document?
Yeah, she is. Let's see.
On
Or,
page,
what page are we? There we go.
there you go.
Sorry. Oh, I did it again.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to, I know. I'm trying to get the sizing. What page was it? 29.
Yeah, so it's Elmcrest all of the way, almost all the way over to 61. Go.
Oh, come on.
There, just a
If
little
I,
bit
if I
further
go down,
down.
it's gonna do it again.
There you go. So the border goes all the way over to the red, and then the red along 61 in that section is, I believe, mixed use. Is that right, Ryan? I think, yeah, it's that red print.
It's fuzzy, I can't, I have it up
Oh,
close.
yeah,
I can't
and the
read it.
pink is the
It
highway
goes
business,
all
like
of
you
the
said.
way, it goes north of 190th. So it's, it's about even with the golf course. So it's a large section that, again, will take some, I think, some skill to fill in as if what we intended as part of the comp plan is really our intent, that's going to take some work. As the residential pressure will continue to be there. Okay. Anything further on this before we move on to staff updates? Thank you, Karen, for pulling that up.
You're welcome.
Let's transition to staff updates. We'll start with Karen, go down the dais, and then wrap around.
Thank you, Mayor Bain. I don't have any updates.
Great.
Just a quick update, Mayor, members of council. You may start seeing some of our Facebook posts go out at different times. I'm actually timing those back to analytics, so when the audience is there is trying to retime those, so we're not just going out in the mornings. So you start seeing some stuff on weekends, so I'm just trying to align messaging when our audience is there and kind of seeing what that does for our likes and engagement. So you'll see some shifts in that moving forward.
Fantastic. Any questions for Dan? Pete?
Your Honor, no update.
Patrick?
No, I covered most of the development issues. Like I said, we have been meeting with the developer downtown to try to understand what the possibilities for the block of Anelli's. The only other thing I have is the Senior Citizen Center has its grand reopening this Wednesday from 2 to 5 p.m. They will welcome anybody that comes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. Any questions for Patrick? Dave?
The only update I have is the compost site is open 4 days a week now, so everybody stated about that. It was busy this weekend, 100 people, so it's we're hauling all day long today, getting it cleared up for tonight, and I'm sure it'll be full again tomorrow morning, so that's all I have.
Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, friendly reminder, next Monday, Washington County will be here to present on County State Aid Highway 33 or Everton Avenue from Broadway down to 11th Avenue. Related developments, this Wednesday, the Planning Commission will see the 71 unit concept lot proposal. And then there's also 2 minor subdivisions on that agenda, which could potentially create 4 additional building lots yet this year. Wednesday, we have 2 pre-application meetings for 2 other major subdivisions, and then staff level will begin the first discussion on another subdivision that was just submitted to. Recap on the first major public engagement meeting with the North Shore Circle residents. Had a great turnout, 27 residents came to the meeting last Monday night, all very supportive of the project. We did show them pictures of what that work is actually going to look like. So we showed deep sewer excavation and replacement, so they don't think this is gonna be an easy job in front of their house and know what they're gonna be dealing with. So we're straight up and showed them what that summer is gonna look like, but then explain the improvements. And then had a lot of one-on-one meetings where there were some issues and concerns on specific properties. So very well documented, well attended. So we'll be continue to move forward. We'll re-engage with them as we get further on some concepts and plans and specs too. So that'll open up with any questions you might have.
Questions for Ryan this evening? All right. And Kim, anything for us this tonight?
No updates, thank you.
All right, you. With that, we'll bring it back to council. Start with Councilmember Byström.
Nothing from me, Mayor Bain.
Very good. Councilmember Husnick.
I attended the EDA meeting tonight on the gist of the meeting was the talking about the downtown vision there. So, and our new vision statement. So you heard about that tonight. We also had a computer glitch for the rest of the meeting. So Dan will get that fixed. I know he will. Also, I attended, excuse me, the school board meeting that occurred last Thursday evening. And the students talked about the successes they had and highlights of the homecoming happened. And also there was some comments about how the pandemic impact on learning on both sides of that issue. Also, they reported the fact that they received $35,000 in change in donations. And the donations range anywhere from $20 to $23,000. So, and then they also talked about 2 people are retiring And they're looking for 11 teacher positions. And then they also talked about the school board self-evaluation discussion and superintendent goals. And the new business was mainly just going over some policy discussions and existing policies. And so that was about all I have to report. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Husnick. Councilmember Valento.
No updates from me tonight.
All right. Just a couple quick updates from me. I had the pleasure of participating in the kickoff send-off for Caleb Wagner as he did his 100-mile run to recognize the 100 Minnesota veterans that unfortunately commit suicide every year. He, in a fundraiser run, ran 100 miles starting and ending in Forest Lake. It was great to be part of his kickoff and then also part of his welcome home. And special congratulations to him, and also kudos to Chamber for just making that a really nice event and nice celebration. Also, just a quick note of appreciation to Planning Commission Chair Gerard, who is taking on the next steps for the zoning changes or considerations related to the MX1 zoning district. So I really appreciate him stepping up and know that we are in good hands with his leadership, and appreciate Bolton and Ming's assistance on helping wherever that is needed from a staff perspective. And I look forward to seeing that good work. Councilmember Husnick summarized our EDA meeting nicely, and obviously that was brought back to this meeting as part of passing our vision for the downtown committee. And that concludes my update. We do have a closed session this evening. Would somebody like to motion us into a closed session?
We can do that, Mayor Bain. I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3B for discussion regarding a letter of intent for parcel numbers 290-322-130-002 and 290-322-124-0001. The closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion of tonight's City Council meeting in council chambers. As there are no other items on the agenda, once back in session, the council will adjourn.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of moving into a closed session signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and we're in closed session.